In the Gospel of John, chapter 13, Jesus told his disciples, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Christians are called to shine the love of Christ in a world of darkness, and a loving heart must be willing to listen before rushing to speak. It must be quick to hear and slow to anger. And that's why I want to focus on this video more on the need for us to listen. You see, political disagreements around racial issues are severing the American church in two as I speak. Christians have said terrible things about each other just because they have different perspectives on racial issues. And some of the things Christians will go to say about each other are just horrendous and should never be part of the church. So I want to continue the focus on the need to build bridges by listening and showing compassion. Notice that my goal in this video is not to prove or disprove systemic racism, whatever you might believe about that phrase. The complexity of that debate is far beyond the scope of this video. Rather, I want to focus on specific ways to build bridges of reconciliation in these divided times. The first way is to hear the stories of the oppressed. Now, many blacks have experienced racial prejudice firsthand, and they live under the shadow of these painful memories, as well as their parents and even more likely grandparents and great-grandparents' painful memories. Now, since the trials of racism are largely unique to blacks, the white majority has difficulty, and this includes myself, we have difficulty relating to these stories on a personal, emotional level. So in conversing with people who have personally experienced racism, compassion must be a paramount priority. We demonstrate compassion by listening to their stories and seeking to understand their perspective. Regardless of their viewpoint, listening through without interjecting is the best way to build long-term bridges and speak truth into people's lives. This leads to the second point. Consider the timing of our words. Now, many Christians have a machine gun of statistics and arguments to refute the idea of systemic racism. Now, I want to encourage you, when you are tempted to fire this weapon, if you are, I encourage you to consider the timing of the situation. There is a time and a place for healthy statistical debates. However, when people are trying to disclose painful personal experiences, will a series of statistical bullets heal their wounds? I think that's a question we need to ask ourselves. Now, from my experience talking to people who are hurting, which I admit is very limited, if you do not hear and understand their story, you will not get anywhere. Reacting argumentatively or defensively burns that bridge and produces anger. Now, both political parties are guilty of this. I have seen Christians from both the right and the left wing and anywhere in between make untimely statements about the other side that burn bridges and increase the personal hurt. This anger and division among Christians makes Satan smile. Therefore, as Christians, we must pray for wisdom and try to be discerning not just about the truth of our words, but the timing. This leads to the third point, and perhaps the most controversial, and that is apologize for insensitive statements. Now, I want to start with something that shouldn't be controversial. That is, all of us make mistakes. Even if the mistake is unintentional, an honest apology goes a long way in building bridges. Now, consider the example of Drew Brees. When asked about people who kneel for the national anthem to protest police brutality, Drew Brees said, quote, "I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country," end quote. Now, he later apologized for these remarks and said, quote, "In an attempt to talk about respect, unity, and solidarity centered around the American flag and the national anthem, I made comments that were insensitive and completely missed the mark on issues we are facing right now as a country," end quote. Now, he never recanted or compromised his patriotic beliefs. He simply apologized for being insensitive. And Breeze continued, I stand with the Black community in the fight against systemic racial injustice and police brutality and support the creation of real policy change that will make a difference. I condemn the years of oppression that have taken place throughout our Black communities and still exists today. Now, I believe this statement is both compassionate and true. Don't get me wrong, America has taken massive strides towards equality, and for that we should be grateful. But the wounds of oppression and injustice are still bleeding in many African American communities. We should condemn this oppression and defend the marginalized. Now, why is this also important? Why should we care? Well, this is important because our love for fellow humans should be a picture of Christ's love for us. If we do not love those who disagree with us, or if we do not love those who are marginalized, we are misrepresenting Christ. So let us be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Let us demonstrate Christ's love in a country that is dying both politically and spiritually, a country that needs to see the love of Christ accurately represented. I'm Caleb Blida, and I hope this video has made you more educated, equipped, and emboldened for the advance of the gospel and the glory of Christ.